want to head straight into our next speaker, who is Heidi Cooper, the formidable Heidi Cooper of the Business Chamber Queensland. She's the CEO and out fighting, well, not fighting, but advocating on our behalf with regards to those matters. So, Heidi, I thought I'd throw to you.
Thank you so much, Zach. Obviously, thank you for that really great overview about what's happening on the Gold Coast. Firstly, businesses, my goodness, I cannot believe that this is happening again. For so many of us who run and operate our own business, this is just such a challenging time. As Zach said, my name is Heidi Cooper. I'm the CEO of Business Chamber Queensland. We are the state's Chamber of Commerce, and we work really closely with all 114 chambers across the state. And in particular, I wanted to call out your incredible president, Zach. He is absolutely fighting for you. And we have been hearing from him all weekend, even when he didn't have any power and he was struggling to get information to us about what it was that you were experiencing. And what that means is with that information, we can be working for you to get the best possible outcomes for you during this time. So what we're seeing at this point in time is really similar to what Tim described, which is there is some physical impact from the cyclone, and then also flooding that we're now seeing, particularly in Brisbane and farther north as well. But and for those businesses, obviously the recovery piece around the physical damage and the cleanup is enormous, and it's devastating particularly for those who are experiencing it again. But what we are also seeing as well this time with this disaster is significant impact for businesses across the board. And what that impact looks like is a real economic and financial impact, particularly around lost trading, lost income, lost revenue, and at the same time, significant cost continuing as well. So what we're hearing from businesses across your region and more broadly in the Southeast Queensland region is that there is significant financial impact for businesses, but it may not always be something that's physical that can be seen. So a lot of the work that we're doing at this point in time is really trying to ensure that those businesses, whether it is that you've been directly physically impacted, but also those that may not have been physically impacted but have experienced significant loss during this time, have the support that you need. Now, I obviously run the chamber, but my husband is a business owner and operator, so I am all too aware of what it is that you've been experiencing. We know that businesses will always put first their people and their customers. I heard Tim say the admirable job that all of you did in this region to protect your people, protect your customers, and protect your property as well, and we saw that across the board. But the reality is for a lot of businesses, they've been shut down, some of them since Tuesday night, Wednesday. We're now starting to see long-term impact around this economic and financial loss for businesses. One of the challenges is, though, that isn't necessarily provided for from a grants perspective, from a support mechanism, and also from an insurance perspective as well. So a lot of the work that we've been doing with Zach over this past period of time, over the weekend and the last couple of days, is really trying to get that message out there to ensure that this support is available to your business. We're doing that from an advocacy perspective. We're speaking very closely. You're going to hear from Steve Coe shortly, and I do want to really commend Steve and his team. They are they're so front and centre when it comes to supporting businesses, and Steve and I have been in very close contact over this time, as well as with his minister as well, talking about how it is that we can work with the government to get support out to your business. And as I said, it may not necessarily be in the support that is typically associated with disasters, because we know that the impact has been so broad this time. You'll hear from Steve shortly around that. The other thing that I did also want to let you know about is the support that's available to you through your chamber network. Being a member of the Gold Coast Chamber means that you are part of the largest business network, not only in Queensland, but in Australia and internationally as well. So we have support available to you through the Queensland Chamber. Later on today and throughout the week, we are offering free webinars to anyone who is needing support, who wants to talk about your business or your workforce as well. One of the things that we are hearing from businesses who have been shut down and are trying to get back and operating now is managing workforce is one of the most challenging aspects that they're trying to to deal with. Obviously, first and foremost is safety of your people, but what we also know is that businesses are now trying to understand what does that mean and how do you manage on a practical level? How do you deal with the fact that potentially you've had continued wage costs but not necessarily output or income from that? How do you manage getting people back to work? How do you support people if they have been physically impacted, if they're still experiencing power or road closures and those types of aspects? So please, Zach has all of the information about our free webinars that are available to you. Please access them. Please contact the Chamber. As I said, we work really closely with Zach, but we're a large state chamber, and what that means is we have resources available to support you. The other thing that is really important is, as a chamber network, we are also undertaking a survey to understand that real business impact. So Zach will be sharing with each and every one of you and all of his members that survey. It takes 3 minutes. Trust me, I'm a busy business owner. You're not going to get tied up in knots. There's not going to be a whole heap of things that you need to answer. It's quick, it's fast, and it helps us to understand what is the real business impact. What's really important in completing that is we will work hand in hand with the government and complementary with the work that Steve and his team is doing, as well as Tim as well, to get real-time information out about what it is that your business is experiencing. Finally, the other major area that we know is a major impact for you at the moment is around power and road closures, because we know for businesses that are in areas that may be able to operate per se because there hasn't necessarily been physical damage from the cyclone or from the flood, there are some of these infrastructure impediments. We know, again, that the authorities are doing everything they can to make that move as quickly as possible. What we are doing is continuing to let them know where there are business impacts, looking at how things that can be prioritised. So any information that you can get us is obviously very helpful around that. But also the other essential element is that we want to ensure that businesses can get back to business as quickly as possible, where it is safe to do so and where it's practical to do that. Long term, we need to have a bigger conversation about this, and as your state chamber, we have been advocating for some time with all levels of government about how it is that we can support businesses long term to build their resilience to be able to weather these types of situations. The unfortunate reality of being a business owner in Queensland is that natural disasters are a part of our everyday business life, and we know that we need to be able to support businesses long term. Now, what that means is we need to build the resilience of the business in regions throughout Queensland. We need to be able to provide businesses with support when you are operating in its normal day-to-day operations, to be able to do some of the things that you did over the past week to get your business prepared and ready. And what that will mean, hopefully, is that we can start to even out some of the spikes that we're seeing. We're seeing as business owners that we see these incredible impacts and there's incredible expenditure that's outlaid. There's incredible loss in the business community. What we want to try and do is even out some of that so that you have the support ongoing to be able to ensure that your business can manage through these challenges such as natural disasters. So we will continue to work to ensure that does happen. I cannot impress upon you enough. Zach is doing an extraordinary job for you and your businesses. Keep in close contact with him. He's working directly with us. Utilise the information that we have available. It's for you. It is free. We are an independent, not-for-profit. We are business owners. We know your business and we're here to support you. Please reach out. Please also know that I personally, along with the entire team, is doing everything we can to advocate for you to ensure that you have the support that you need today to recover from this disaster, but also that you have long-term support as well. We're making it real, we're making it relevant, and we're trying to highlight what it is that you're experiencing today. I've seen it firsthand, you've experienced it firsthand, and we want to see the business community in this impacted region up and running as soon as possible. Thank you very much for having me today. I do need to get onto another webinar to support another region around their impact as well, but please keep connected to your chamber network. We know that businesses that are part of a chamber network will be more successful and will thrive long term. We're here to support you. I am so sorry that this is happening again, and we want to be able to support you to get back as quickly as possible.
Thank you so much, Heidi. We really appreciate your support, and I just want to highlight the work that you're doing, and Terry as well. I call you both superwomen because you're just out there doing all that incredible work, and the hardest job, no doubt, is putting up with me. So thank you so much for your incredible work.
Thank you. And Zach, obviously Terry will stay online and will be able to answer any questions that you may have for the chamber. Thank you again. Take care, everyone, and yeah, let's work together to get back to business as soon as possible.
Thanks, Heidi. What I'll do is the next big question that I'm hearing on the ground pretty consistently is to do with employer obligations. I couldn't think of anyone better to speak about that than my good friend, Greg. Greg is obviously the owner of his own business in Effective Workplace Solutions. He's also the advocacy chair for our Chamber of Commerce and has done a lot of work during the recent industrial relation law changes around submissions for that in representing our members. So I know that recent changes mean we're in untested waters, and Greg, I felt it was probably best for you to address that. So over to you, Greg. Sorry, Greg, you're muted. You might just need to unmute on the bottom there. Should be an option on the bottom left-hand side to turn on or off your microphone. There you go.
Is that better? Can you hear me now?
That's it. That's it. Go for gold.
All right. Thank you, mate. Thanks, Zach, for the opportunity to speak to everyone this morning and provide some advice and some information around the industrial relations to human resources element of this event. I'm going to start with the technical and legal issues and talk about those, and then I'll talk about the what I call the human element of the disaster that we've had in the last week or so. I wanted to talk about stand down first because this is probably the critical area, and to a large extent, some of this information is a little bit beyond the horses bolted. But I think it's important that we understand just exactly what the stand down provisions of the Act mean, what you can do, and what you need to do. And if it's not applicable to what's occurred in the last week, then you might be able to take this information into whatever occurs in the future. It's slightly different to what the COVID stand down provisions were, but there is a provision in the Fair Work Act, section 524 of the Fair Work Act, that allows employers to stand down employees without pay if they cannot be usefully employed due to a stoppage of work outside of the employer's control. In other words, a natural disaster, or including a natural disaster. And of course, Cyclone Alfred is considered to be one of those situations. During the stand down period, the employer is not obligated to pay the employees unless an award or agreement provides otherwise, and I don't know of any particular award or agreement that provides otherwise, and is contrary to section 524. So it's important that the employer must be able to demonstrate that there was a stoppage of work, that the stoppage is directly linked and as a result of the natural disaster, which of course you would be able to, and the employees cannot be usefully employed. Now that means that the employer must consider alternatives before it can lawfully stand down employees. This will include a consideration of whether there's an ability for employees to work remotely and whether there's any alternative or viable or available alternative duties within the employee's skill levels and expertise which can be performed. So having regard to that, if the employer still needs to stand down employees and you've exhausted all avenues of trying to usefully employ your staff during the natural disaster, then if you still need to stand down employees, the employer must provide a written notice to all affected employees. And that written notice will set out the reason for the stand down, that is, because of the closure due to cyclone or flooding as a result, the expected duration, if that's known, the entitlements such as annual leave may be accessed during this period, and the employee's right to request to use annual leave or other paid entitlements. So that's the stand down provision. So As I said, this information probably could have been useful on Tuesday or Wednesday of last week, when many of our employers were closing, businesses were closing. But I think it's important to note that if you haven't gone through that process under Section 524 of providing that written notice to the employees of the stand down, then in a technical sense, you may have an issue if you have if you have actually stood them down but not provided that stand down notice. In terms of working from home, and I know a lot of businesses now are able to put themselves in a situation where many employees are working from home. If working from home is practical, employers must confirm if the employee's environment or home environment is safe to do so. That'll include checking that essential measures are in place, undertaking risk assessments, and because employers still have a duty of care, even though the employee is working from home, to ensure the health and safety of employees working from home. Safe Work Australia on their website has great information on working from home provisions, particularly in respect to work health and safety. In terms of paid leave, if employees are unable to work, the employer is not required to pay them, as we just mentioned, under Section 524 of the Act of Stand Down provisions. However, before making any decision, you should first explore the options of annual leave or working from home arrangements. If different duties are required to be performed, then that's okay to do so, provided there's no contract or award provision to the contrary. The employer can issue a lawful and reasonable direction for employees to perform those tasks. These duties might be important to help the business recover from any flooding or other adverse consequences from the cyclone. However, you must ensure that the temporary role can be safely performed, they have the skills to do so, and it's not inconsistent with any contractual award or agreement obligations. The next area I wanted to talk about is standing back up. So if you've stood down an employee and you're now reopening your business, which I know a lot of businesses would be in that situation either yesterday or today, once you're able to open the doors and you're open for business, you must stand back up all staff that have been stood down, because there's no longer a stoppage of work. It doesn't matter how much trade you have, immediately after you reopen, you must stand back up all staff who have been stood down and unpaid during the stand down period. If your trade has reduced and you don't require all your staff, then you should consider offering staff annual leave, or, as we've stated previously, to have staff performing alternative duties, for example, cleaning up, restocking, or tidying up any admin tasks. So the important point from all of this is, if you have stood down staff and then you're reopening, as soon as you reopen, you must stand all those staff back up. Different story in relation to casuals, of course. You can keep the casuals not rostered and not working, but for permanent and for permanent staff, then you must stand them back up. If they can't be usefully employed for the hours that they're required to be employed, then you need to look at either annual leave, asking them to take annual leave, or indeed long service leave if they've got it, or asking them to perform other tasks within the business. Also, in terms of returning to work, you must make sure that you undertake a risk assessment. So employers must conduct risk assessments to ensure the workplace is safe before returning to work. This will include structural safety checks, hazard removal, and restocking emergency equipment. You should also go through the normal consultation process in relation to work health and safety with employers to ensure that any return to work plans are consistent with any government directives. Now that we've dealt with the technical or more legal issues, I wanted to talk about the more human element of this event and the role that employers can play in the aftermath of this event. Serious weather events like Alfred throw up some serious challenges for business owners, but also for your staff. Not just physically, that is having your house damaged or flooded, but also there's significant psychological and emotional toll that these sorts of events can take. In that respect, we've learned a lot of valuable lessons from the 2022 floods, not just amongst our clients, but also amongst our staff at EWS. We had one particular staff member who lived in Chindra, who was very much affected by the flood. She lost just about everything. She lost a car and many of her belongings. So she was very much adversely psychologically affected by that. She ended up with PTSD, and to the point where if there was any indication of significant rain about to fall in the Tweed area, that triggered her PTSD and was having panic attacks at the thought of having to go through that again. So at least two of our staff, in particular, this particular employee ended up moving away. We lost her. She no longer works with us. She had to move away from the area, and she moved to Darwin. So we've lost one really good, valuable staff as a result of the floods in 2022. And I think that's a valuable lesson for us, not just from learning from our clients, but also our own employees. So there's a lot that employers can do to assist staff that have been affected by a serious weather event. You should continue consistent and regular communication with staff if you can during that period. One of our clients set up a phone tree, as they called it, and the staff who were working and were able to get to work were making phone calls and making checks with staff who weren't able to work and were being affected by the floods. So I think that's one really good example of what should be done and how to do it properly. So keep that regular communication going with staff. If you have an EAP or an employee assistance program, make sure you offer that to all your staff or any other mental health support for affected employees. And also, I'd let the EAP know that you've made your staff aware that the EAP is there, so they're able to be ready to take any calls that's needed. If you don't have an EAP, you can refer the staff to a number of agencies. For example, Beyond Blue, Lifeline, 1300 MH Call, that is 1300 Mental Health Call, which is a hotline. There's 1300 Yarn, which is the same sort of situation, but it's a mental health, mental health hotline for Indigenous and Torres Strait Islanders or their own GP. I think the other thing that we learned from 2022 is that different people are impacted differently. Some are heightened much more easily and triggered much more easily, and some aren't in that way, but the response is often delayed. In other words, it's taken them months before they start to feel the impact of what they've just been through in terms of the cyclone or the flood. So I think that's pretty important. Also, I think you should take or make reasonable adjustments for staff who have been affected. For example, allow them time off to attend medical appointments, and also allow them time off to meet with builders and other tradesmen, and also insurance assessors as well. I think that's a really good way of making sure that your staff feel supported in those particular circumstances. So I've just been through all of that with you. Thanks, Zach, for the opportunity to speak this morning. By all means, I'm happy to answer any questions. If you want to give us a call at Effective Workplace Solutions after this, I'm basically available all day, and I'm happy to take any calls from you guys. And stay safe.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks, Legend. Very good to see you as well.